If you are looking to make more money and to really figure out how to attract more into your life, this episode is for you. It's all about the psychology behind manifesting money and attracting more abundance in your life. And we have 4 powerful money experts to deliver some secrets that are going to blow you away. So get ready, like this video, leave a comment below on your most valuable insight that you're taking away, take your notes, and also make sure to share this with one friend that you think would help them in their money journey as well. And this first expert and moment is a School of Greatness favorite. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I love how Dr. Joe can take these complex concepts and break them down for everyone to understand. This moment from a past episode that we did was one of the most re-watched moments of all time. And you thought it was extremely powerful. And maybe you missed this. So I want to make sure you really listen to this, you dive in and you pay attention. And as you listen, ask yourself this: how can you change your language around money to become more positive? What is your thoughts around the identity of money and the psychology of how it plays in our lives? Because a lot of people want to make more, they want to attract more, but they're just struggling with just the concept of it.
Well, I think we've been programmed quite a bit with our relationship with money. And we have a relationship with everything known in our environment. You have a relationship, a neurological network in your brain for your parents, for your cell phone, for your computer, where you live, where you've lived in the past, what you're going to do tomorrow. That for the most part, the brain is a reflection of everything that we know, right? So along with that is our relationship with money. And I feel like I have a really good relationship with money because I work on having a really good relationship with everything in my life.
Did you always have a good relationship with money?
I think so. I think so. I've never really lived in lack. That just wasn't part of it. Even when I went to college and I had to take out student loans and stuff, I always figured out a way to always be a little bit ahead of the curve. And so let's back up and just look at how people form beliefs, because most beliefs are created from past experiences, right? So children, when they're in their early ages, their brainwaves are very slow. Like their brainwaves are in alpha when they're like 7 to 12. They're in theta when they're like 2 to 6 years old, and they're in delta like when they're newborn to 2 years old. And so these brainwave states are states that were very suggestible to information.
So when we hear information, we believe it.
And we accept it, we believe it, we surrender to it as if it's the truth without analyzing it, because there's no analytical facilities yet.
Right.
The analytical mind starts around 12 or so, 7 to 12, and that analytical mind is actually what creates a barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind.
So before 12, roughly, what we see, how we model our parents' behavior, what they say to us.
It's all being programmed subconsciously, right? And so that's really, really important, because if you heard money is the root of all evil, money is bad, only certain people are allowed to make money, you have to work hard to make money, this is how you got to do it. And that becomes the foundation subconsciously. Recording an audio file. You just keep recording that audio file, it becomes a subconscious program, right? So a lot of people have a relationship with money based on either what they've been told or what they've experienced in their outer environment, right? So then we gain information from our environment, and the stronger the emotion we feel from experiences in our lives, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more the brain freezes a frame and takes a picture. And that snapshot is called the memory. So
based on an emotion.
Based on an emotion. The emotion alters our internal state. So you're going along as Lewis, feeling really good, and all of a sudden you have this trauma, you have this crisis, you have this shock, and all of a sudden you have this dramatic change in your internal state, and your senses get heightened, and then you freeze the frame and you associate this internal state with whatever it is that's causing it, right? And that's how we create long-term memories, right? So
are painful memories more powerful, or beautiful memories more powerful?
They're both equal.
Okay.
They're both equal, but the problem is I think most people experience from more the negative emotions, right? And those negative emotions really are derived from the hormones of stress, right? So the alarm system, the emergency system, creates an arousal inwardly. And that arousal is saying there's something dangerous in your outer environment, right? And it could be a person, a circumstance, an accident, or whatever. And that change in emotional state causes you to remember the event. You got to pay attention, right? You got to stay really and narrow your focus on the cause. So think about people who have relationships with money, right, from the past. All beliefs are based on past experiences. So you have an experience where you lose money, you have an experience where money's taken away from you, you have an experience where you don't have enough, you're living in a place where there's not enough money, or a family that's not enough money. Then the emotion that most people are living by on a moment-to-moment basis is lack. Like, I'm in lack of having something that I want, okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because the experience changes your emotional state. You freeze the frame, you take a picture. The problem is, that's hardware. So we think neurologically within the circuits of that past experience, and we feel chemically within the boundaries of that emotion, which would say, for example, be lack, right? So now the person says...
Before you go on to the next thing, what happens to the body and the mind when it is in an environment of lack? Mentally or physically, I'm in lack. What is the body and the mind saying?
Yeah, so the body is saying, I'm waiting for some external event to occur. I win the lottery. I marry the right guy. Whatever it is, that you're waiting for that event to occur. That experience produces an emotion. So the emotion then takes away the lack. And so when we play the game in three-dimensional reality, the creation game in three-dimensional reality, we experience separation from everyone or everything, because our senses fool us into the illusion, the hallucination of separation. I'm here and you're there. I'm here and the door is over there. So I'm aware that I'm here at one point of consciousness, and the door is over there, another point of consciousness. Okay, so in order for me to get from here to the door, I got to move my body and do something through space. I got to do something, and everything in this three-dimensional reality is going to take time and energy, right? So, okay, so then here's Lewis right here, and then he says, okay, I want this experience in my future, and your brain automatically predicts and projects how far in the future you think it's going to take.
Maybe it's a year, 5 years, 10 years.
30 years.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because that's what it's going to take to pay off that house, right? So now, one point of consciousness, I'm here. The other point of consciousness is where I'm placing my dream. So I'm separate from that experience. So then how do I get to that experience? In three-dimensional reality, you got to get up and you got to do something. You got to go to work. You got to drive to work. It takes energy. You got to fill your car with gas. You got to eat food. You got to work. All this stuff. You got to sleep. You got to recover if there's stress. And now people are, in a sense, waiting for the experience that's 10 years down the road or 30 years down the road to happen, to take away the lack of them not having it. And unfortunately, many times when the experience finally occurs, they can't enjoy it because they're too exhausted, right? So you play the game, you go to school, you study really hard, or you study on your own, you develop some skills, you make the right choices, you start saving money, you start learning from your mistakes. And then the game is, how many things can you accumulate? And that accumulation then you associate with being wealthy or being abundant or being successful, right? And some people get really good at it, right? You can get really good at that. But for the most part, though, when we create from three-dimensional reality, we're creating from lack and separation. In other words, you're driving down the road and you see someone driving a car that all of a sudden you realize that you don't have. The moment you become aware that that person has that car and you don't have it, you're in lack of having it, right? So what the brain naturally does is it naturally creates you driving that car. And you have an image of yourself driving that car, and you start identifying, wow, that would be a greater experience for me to have. The problem is the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of actually happening for most people is the concept called time. Right? Between cause and effect, right? So some people develop the ability to manage themselves and manage their life. They develop certain skills and they can pay for it and they can get it very quickly. The problem is when the novelty of that experience wears off, the car, and they're no longer identifying with that, and the feeling of emptiness and lack comes back.
They need to find something else.
They got to go to find something else. And so there's this game that goes on where you never have enough, right? And that's the lack game, right? So then if you think about people having the things they want in their life, when they create from lack and separation, it's the experience in three-dimensional reality that produces the emotion. And the emotion is saying, let's feel and experience this thing that you've been in lack and separation from. And that emotion then takes away the lack or separation. But you've worked really hard to get it. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Is there another way to do it?
Yes.
Okay, so the person who's living in lack is waiting for their wealth to feel abundant. They're waiting for their success to feel empowered. Mm-hmm. They're waiting for their healing to feel gratitude. They're waiting for their new relationship to feel love. They're waiting for their mystical experience to feel awe. That's the Newtonian model of reality, of cause and effect. Waiting for that event to happen to take away this separation or lack. Nothing wrong with it. It's the way most people create. But what we've discovered is actually something else. The moment you feel gratitude, your healing begins. The moment you feel worthy and abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you're empowered, you are moving towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you'll create an equal. The moment you are in awe of life, you're going to have a mystical experience. And so that's causing an effect, right? So then if you can teach people then how to create, instead of from lack or separation, but create from wholeness, and create from what we call the quantum field instead of three-dimensional reality.
What's the difference?
Okay, so the way first of all, it takes knowledge, okay? The quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, you can't feel it. It exists beyond our experience of three-dimensional reality.
Would this be in our mind's consciousness, or would this be in a different space?
Okay, let's look at that. So the answer to the question is, how much of your waking day do you put your attention on matter, on the material world, and how much of your waking day are you aware of energy and frequency? For most people, they're unaware of the quantum field. And if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. Right. Just like you have a nose, but if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. The moment you become aware of it, it exists. Well, the quantum field, you can study all kinds of science, and they'll tell you there is this invisible field of frequency and energy that exists beyond the senses that tend to connect everything physical and material. In fact, everything physical and material is connected to this field, okay? So how do you get there, right? How do you get there?
How do you get there?
How do you get there? So we discovered that when you take all of your attention off your body and you are not paying attention to your emotions, your drives, your habits, if you could take all of your attention off of every element in your environment, your cell phone, your tablet, your computer, your car, your whatever it is, your bed, take your attention away from everything, every place that you live, where you sleep, where you work, and you're not thinking about time. You're not thinking about your schedule, where you need to be, or what happened yesterday. You can relax into the present moment. There tends to be a dramatic change in the way the brain functions when people do this properly. We call it getting beyond yourself, but in a sense, you're dissociating from your three-dimensional reality. Why? Because if you're thinking about anything in your three-dimensional reality, that's where your attention is and that's where your energy is, okay? So we kind of figured out this formula when people really become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. They're pretty much all of a sudden outside the constraints of the Newtonian world of got to do something to get an outcome. And if you can teach people how to linger there without a name, without a face, without a profession, without a family, without a culture, without a past, without a disease, you teach them how to be in this place we call the unknown, right? And you teach them that from that place, that invisible field, is where everything material comes from. And if they could create coherence in their brain, you need a strong signal in the brain. The more coherent the brain, the more stronger the signal.
What do you mean a strong signal?
Okay, let's see how I could say this. When most people, when we look at brains in real time, and we're looking at people's how their mind is working. When you're under stress, okay, stress is created by not being able to predict something that's going to happen in your life. the perception that something's going to get worse or you can't control something, right? So when that occurs, we switch on that primitive nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, and the brain goes into this very alarmed state called high beta. That means pay attention to the outer world. There's danger out there. But if it's not a predator and it's traffic or your coworker or your ex,
Right.
this is where it gets to be a problem because it becomes very maladaptive, right? So when we're in that state and the brain is in that aroused state, we try to control and predict everything. So every person, every object, everything, every place, even your body has a neurological network in your brain, right? So as the arousal happens, we start shifting our attention to all these elements, and like a lightning storm in the clouds, the brain starts firing very, very incoherently. And when the brain's incoherent, we're incoherent.
That's not a strong signal.
It's a static on the wire. That's disconnection. There is no signal.
Right.
So when we're in that state, we're always really looking for the worst case scenario of what's going to happen, because if you prepare for the worst, anything less happens, a better chance of survival, right? So in this kind of aroused state, as we shift our attention to each one of these elements that are known in our environment, the brain starts compartmentalizing and firing out of order. And that is what creates what's called autonomic dysregulation. That causes the brain and body to get really out of balance, right? So in that state, we're over-focused. You know, when you're stressed, you're over-focused on something. You can't stop thinking about it. Our research shows that when you do that, you actually make your brain worse because you're analyzing your problems within some disturbing emotion, and that emotion is driving you further out of balance. You're actually knocking your brain and body out of balance by thought alone, and you're driving it into these more aroused states, right?
For someone that's been living like that for decades, that's their base state. How do they even realize how to get out of that?
They don't. Usually it takes crisis, right? It takes trauma.
Extreme breakdown.
Yeah, breakdown.
A loss, a death,
all of
a
that.
breakup, a divorce, a near
bankruptcy, whatever it is, a disease, a diagnosis, whatever, something where you just can't go on business as usual. Like, now it's time to really start looking, right?
They have to wake up then.
Yeah. So let's get back to the concept of abundance here, because
you need a strong signal in this field.
Right. So then, if you can teach people to do the exact opposite, go from putting all of their attention on everything physical and material in the world of separation, and instead of narrowing their focus on something material, ask them to broaden their focus and put it on nothing. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when you put your attention on space and you divert your attention, the act of sensing without thinking actually starts to slow the brainwaves down. Not only slow it down, but all of a sudden cause the brain to start reintegrating, starts to synchronize, right? And so you see different compartments of the brain that were firing out of order start to resonate. They start to communicate. They're all of a sudden synchronizing, and what syncs in the brain kind of links in the brain. So when a person has their whole entire brain firing in rhythm, that's a very strong signal that you can send out into the field.
So when that signal is strong in that position, what can you create from that space?
Okay, but that's only one element.
Okay.
So then the clear intention tends to be a very important element that we have to get down. And the more coherent the brain, the more clear the signal for that intention. So with intention and attention, we could actually make thought more real than anything else. Now, what is that? You're saying, what would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to be abundant? What would it be like to have all my needs met? What would it be like to have more than I need? What would I do if I had everything I ever wanted? The answer always is the same. You start giving stuff away. Because if an abundant person is truly abundant, why would they hold on? They would say, I'm not in lack. There's more for everybody, okay? Turns out, though, that the signal sent out isn't enough. You have to draw the experience back to you. And so
send the signal out to,
it's coherent brain,
financial freedom,
whatever that is.
Abundance, all these different things.
Right. Whatever that is for you. Whatever that is for you.
Putting that out there with your signal, with the intention and the attention.
Right.
And then how do you draw it to you? So in the physical world,
in the physical world, you got to go get it. You got to do something. This is the plane of demonstration. You got to go get it. And when you're in lack until it occurs, right?
But I'm hearing you say there's a way to not chase but attract.
All right. So if you're creating from the field instead of from matter, right? There's a very strong possibility that you'll shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it. And when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that future that you want to experience, now if you're creating from the field, you actually don't go anywhere to get it. You actually draw it to you. So here comes the synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences, the opportunities, and they come out of nowhere. And you say, I don't understand. I didn't do anything. Well, you changed your energy. And so then the other element is a coherent heart, right? And the heart has a magnetic signature. And the magnetic signature is what draws reality to us, right? So you combine that clear intention with a coherent brain. Now here's the key. This takes practice.
Yes.
Because the person who's living in lack is usually unworthy, is usually insecure, is usually in their past, they're usually frustrated, they're usually impatient, they're usually resentful because nothing's changing out there because it's taking too long. Well, everything takes a lot of time when you do matter to matter, right? So then if you teach them, okay, we know all about that. We know the story behind that. We know what your parents told you about money, all that other, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But now let's do something that would be really cool. Let's write down the feelings of how you would feel if that future happened, and you're going to have to feel that feeling before it occurs. So now, okay, what does an abundant person feel? Pretty much free, a lot of freedom.
Peace, excited, joyful.
In love with life, grateful to be alive, abundant. Okay, now let's practice feeling those. Turns out when you're feeling those other emotions like resentment and impatience and frustration, you're stepping on the gas pedal, you're just turning on the sympathetic nervous system, and you're stepping on the brake. At the same time, which is you're angry, you're frustrated, but the fight or flight nervous system says run, fight, or hide, and you're sitting in a Zoom meeting and your neck is pulsating is because the heart is beating against the closed system, right? You're not using it in an adaptive way. So the heart starts firing out of order. It starts firing incoherently, and incoherent waves cancel each other out. It's called destructive interference, and then we stop trusting our future. Energy leaves the heart. Energy leaves the brain, energy leaves the heart, and you can't get in touch with the feeling of your future because in survival, which those are hormones of stress, all those emotions, in survival, it's not a time to create, right? It's time to run, fight, and hide. Okay, so we got to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want. The habit of doing it that way for something greater to occur.
One of the things I love about Dr. Joe is how he gets us to constantly rethink and unlearn behaviors or patterns that hold us back. And so many people say to themselves, once I have more money, once I have the car, once I have the relationship, once I have the home, once I have the whatever, the increase at the job, then I will feel more abundant. I will feel better. I'll feel happier. I'll feel freer, whatever it might be. I'll feel enough. But the thing is that I love that Dr. Joe talks about is we need to change the internal emotion of gratitude, the environment of emotion, of positivity, of love, of joy, and of abundance within ourselves. When you can shift, instead of saying, well, when I have this thing, then I'll feel more free. I'll feel more abundant. I'll feel more loving and deserving. And you say, no, I'm going to go into the internal first. I'm going to be harmony. I'm going to be peace. I'm going to be joy. I'm going to express these emotions externally as well. When you first be the emotion and then you express that in your environment to people around you, then those things that you want come to you even more. They come in abundance. And it may not happen all at once, but the more you do it, you act as if you don't also need all those extra things because you have the emotions and the feelings that you want right now. So for me, I love that insight from Dr. Joe. Leave a comment below on what your big takeaway was from that as well. And building on these transformative ideas from Dr. Joe, I want to turn our attention to the late, great Bob Proctor, who is a friend of mine, who's a guest on the show, that I had a building relationship with. I looked at him as a mentor of mine. I didn't get to know him for more than a few years, but we had an interesting relationship, and he was just a favorite person that I loved having on the show. And we were supposed to have him back on again, but unfortunately he passed. But he just had such a sharp mind and a giving heart all the way to the end of his life. Such an abundant dreamer. Such a person and a man of high values, morals, and character that wanted to serve. And he had big dreams all the way to his last days. And we are always told that if we work hard, then we will become successful. But Bob shed light on the fact that even hard work won't make me or us a success. There is more to it than just hard work. And in this moment, in this segment you're about to watch and listen, Bob shares 3 key habits for continual growth. And as you listen or watch, I want you to take notes on these 3 keys and ask yourself, how can you implement them in your life today? Let's take a look.
You were making $4,000 something dollars a year. Your expenses were $6,000, I think, something like that. And then you started making $14,000.
No, my expenses wasn't $6,000. I owed $6,000.
You owed $6,000.
I owed everybody that I knew.
And you were making around $14,000 a year after that, shortly after that.
No, I went from earning $4,000 a year to $14,500 a month.
Exactly.
Now, if you annualize that, that was $175 a year. So I went from earning $4,000 a year to $175. I hadn't earned $175 that year. I got it up to $14,500 a month. So if you annualize it, that's a change. Phenomenal change.
Is it possible for anyone to go from poverty level to extremely financially successful?
Absolutely. I think earning money is one of the simplest things I ever learned. And it's one of the most misunderstood things. Wealthy people historically have always had multiple sources of income. They don't have one. They have many. Yeah. I was cleaning floors. I thought the answer was work harder. Because I really wanted to earn some money.
Yeah, of course.
And I thought it was all important. Today, my attitude towards money has changed dramatically. But I thought the answer was get another office to clean. Well, I was working so hard, I passed out on the street. I would have been maybe 27, 28. I literally passed out on the street. I was working so hard. I came to, and there's a great big cop looking at me. I was laying there. It was scary. There was a group of people around me. I saw lights flashing. Then I saw a couple of guys in uniform with a stretcher. And it was scary. I had passed out. I guess they thought I had dropped dead. I had a heck of a time getting away from them, but I did get away. They didn't take me to the hospital. I talked them out of it. I got away, and I got thinking, I'm not doing this right.
Working harder, working more hours is not the way.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, Napoleon Hill wrote that in Think and Grow Rich. He said, if you are one of those people who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought, it is not true. Riches, when they come in huge quantities, never come as a result of hard work. They come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. So you got to find a demand and fill it, but you got to follow definite principles to do it.
Wow.
In other words, it's got to be in harmony with the law. You got to give more than you get. If you're trying to get, forget it.
Yeah.
Well, I got by myself and I thought, I'm doing something wrong. I was earning more money, but here I'm passing out. This is not normal. And it's like a little voice in my head said, if you can't clean all of them, don't clean any of them. So I got all dressed up. People now accuse me of sleeping in my suit. I wouldn't take a suit off. Didn't matter where I was. Because I knew the cleaners were tired, and I would go around. I got other people cleaning offices. And I knew pretty well where they'd be. So I drop around, I'd bring coffee and donuts. And I would drop in and I would talk to them about goals. And then I'd go to the next person. But I always was dressed up because I knew how tired you get. And if I was in working clothes, they'd expect me to help them so they could finish and go home.
Interesting.
But when I had shiny shoes and a suit and shirt and tie, they didn't expect me to help them clean. So I'd go on to the next place and then the next place. And that's when I started to open offices. I went from Toronto to Montreal to Boston to Cleveland to Atlanta to London, England.
And you hired cleaners.
Everywhere I went.
Yeah.
I had people cleaning.
What should someone think about if they're struggling financially right now or they feel like they've been struggling for many years and it feels like they're just surviving week after week, month after month. They're not sure how to get to that kind of sense of freedom for at least a 6-month runway or beyond. What should they start thinking about?
You know, what you just described, I believe, the majority of people are living that way.
Yeah.
The majority. Now, that's rather sad, but I think it's true. And it's because we only have one problem in the whole world, and that's ignorance. They're living in ignorance. They don't know that what they're doing is going to keep them where they are. And they keep doing it because they don't know how to change. They're overwhelmed with the debt. People are saying, I need the money. They haven't got it. They want to take their family on a vacation. They don't have the money to go. So they may borrow it and go anyway. Now they got more debt. They have to understand that they don't have to live that way. I wrote a book called You're Born Rich. The truth is you are. Most people are just a little short of money, but you are born rich in potential. Anybody can go to our site, go to bobproctor.com. You can download the book, You Were Born Rich, free. It won't cost you a cent. And chapter 2 is How Much Is Enough. It's described very well how to get out of debt. You got to create a debt repayment program where it's all done automatically. And then you focus on prosperity. You've got to have a financial goal. You've got to work toward it. And you've got to understand that you can earn more than you're earning. And wealthy people don't have one source of income. They have more than one. I was earning money all last night while I was sleeping.
Yeah.
You can actually earn more money when you're sleeping than you can spend when you're awake.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like a cute line, but it's true. There's no end to what we can earn. If you are not getting information from someone who is already wealthy, then you're probably getting information from the wrong people. Most people ask their brother-in-law, or the guy next door, or the girl they know, how do I earn more? Hell, if they knew, they'd be earning it. They don't know. And most people talk to people that don't know. Carlyle put it very well. He said he did not believe in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance. And that's where most people are getting it from, people that don't know any more than themselves. I think you have to go. That's why these seminars are so important today.
Yeah.
People have the opportunity to go and learn. Most people won't pay to go. I tell people, listen, you invest in this, it'll probably be, and borrow the money to do it. It's probably the last time you'll ever have to borrow money.
Yeah.
Our seminars are not raw. It's not nothing. Our seminars teach people about themselves. It's like when Bill Goff said, if I want to be free, I got to be me. I'm thinking, I better know who me is. I didn't know who me was. I was doing a lot of things. I was doing them right. I was earning money, but I didn't know who I was. I started to study me. And the more I know me, the better I know you. You only have to study yourself. You'll know what everybody, because we're all the same.
Yeah.
It's our behavior that's different, our results that are different.
I heard a friend of mine, Dean Graziosi, I don't know if he coined this or someone else said it, and he said it from someone else, but he said, those that pay attention. And when you invest in yourself, you're paying attention to.
I never heard that before, but that is the truth.
Those that pay attention. But if you don't pay for it, you're not going to pay as much attention. If you pay more, you'll pay more attention to learn.
I had an aunt and uncle who were as poor as church mice. I mean, they just didn't have anything. And they had a whole house full of kids. And I used to drop by their house periodically. I was doing very well. And I was teaching seminar. And I remember it was around Christmas time. And he was rushing around trying to get credit cards from some big stores so they could buy presents for the kids.
Yeah.
And I said, you know something? He said, never mind. Next year will be different. I said, you know something? Next year is going to be exactly the same as it is this year because you never change you.
Wow.
I said, you should get into the seminars and learn something. I know something you don't know. Well, they came to the seminar. He got paid every 2 weeks. So that meant 3 times a year, I think he'd get paid 3 times, maybe 4 times a year. He'd get paid 3 times in a month. That one pay was extra because they were budgeted for 2 pays. I made them pay to come to it. Wow. Something said I made them pay. And I think they thought I should have comped them into it. But, Mark thanked me, my aunt, I don't know how many times that I charged them. She said, we wouldn't have kept coming. I didn't even know what you were talking about. I was running seminars. It was 7 evenings from 7 to 10. It was running over a series of nights years ago. And she said, I wouldn't have kept coming. But she said, because we paid, I came.
Of course.
He's right. If they pay attention. That is so true. And if they don't,
you're not going to care. When you hear something you don't like, this is not for me. Let me get out of here. Mm-hmm. I got something better to do.
Yeah.
Especially in LA. I want to go to the beach. Mm-hmm. This is too hard work.
Yeah.
It's confronting my ego. I don't need this.
I'm firmly convinced if a person doesn't understand a paradigm is nothing but a multitude of habits. They're programmed into your subconscious mind to control your behavior. It's got nothing to do with how smart you are. It's got nothing to do with what your formal education is. It's got nothing to do with which side of the tracks you come from. It has to do with your paradigm. The paradigm is a program in your subconscious mind. It's both genetic and environmental that's controlling your behavior. Everyone that can hear my voice knows how to do better than they're doing. And they may wonder, why don't I do it? It's because you're programmed to do what you're doing. Yeah. And until you change the program, nothing's going to change. Paradigm has to be changed.
I love that. What would you say are if you could share 3 key habits for people that if they want to continue to grow every day, be more prosperous, be more abundant, happier, joyful, healthier in their life, what are 3 key things, habits every day, not talking about morning routine, but just overall habits every single day? What should people be focusing on consistently?
They should study every day.
Study.
They should have a mentor, someone that has already accomplished what they dream about. They might not even know the person. They could get introduced to them and ask them, what are half a dozen things I should do every day? Yeah. Ask them. They know. Most people are getting advice from people who don't know any more than themselves. Yeah. And the third one, you've definitely got to have a goal. And when you write it, you've already got it intellectually. So you operate intellectually, emotionally, and physically. Well, your intellectual mind, the second you decide on it, you've got it. It tells you in the Bible, before you speak, I'll hear you. It's because the thought always precedes the word. The second you get emotionally involved, you've got it emotionally. Yep. So you've got it intellectually, you've got it emotionally. It's only a period of time till you got it physically.
Be, do, have, yeah.
That's right. But the have comes in a period of time.
So it's not overnight?
Every seed has a gestation or an incubation period. Yeah. When a woman gets pregnant with a child, it takes 280 days. Yeah. The husband doesn't come home a month later and say, come on, where is it? Right. He waits, as James Allen said, as one who understands. He understands there's a gestation period. Where I come from, if you plant a seed for a carrot, it takes approximately 70 days for it to manifest. All physical seeds have a gestation or an incubation period. We know that now, but we didn't always know that. We weren't always aware. No one knows what the gestation period is for a spiritual seed, and an idea is a spiritual seed. But we do know that it operates by the same laws. And the laws of the universe are precise. They can be studied. Yeah. They can be understood. We operate by law. Our life is governed by laws. Like we know it's going to get dark tonight. We don't wonder if it is. Yeah. You know when the tide goes out, it's coming back. Winter never follows winter. We know these things. That's all expression of law. Well, when we bring our life into harmony with the laws, we're going to enjoy more of life. Yeah. If we fight it, we're going to lose.
Study, study, study. Have great mentors who have already created what you want, and get clear goals and look at those goals over and over again and work every day towards those goals. I loved those takeaways from Bob. And I would always ask Bob when I would talk to him, hey, what are you reading lately? What's the books you're reading? And he would tell me like the books he's reading in his 80s. And he was a constant learner. And I think one of the cool things also is that he would read the same book over and over again. He didn't just read it once and then go to the next thing, although he would read lots of books, but he had his key books that he was like, every time I read it, I remind myself that I need to keep showing up in a certain way. And I learn something new when I read the same book. You know, a lot of people ask me like, Lewis, why do you continue to do this show after 11 plus years and keep interviewing these people? Don't you hear kind of the same stuff over and over again, just from different messengers? And sure, I do hear a lot of the same things over and over again, but I need these reminders in my life just as much as everyone else does. And so I'm constantly learning, and I never want to stop being a learner. So again, big shout out to Bob Proctor and his wisdom. I'm so grateful for his mentorship and that he gave us so much great content to continue to learn from him for many years to come. Big thanks to Bob Proctor. And if you want to make sure to check out the other interviews we had with them, we'll have that linked below with all of our experts from these clips here today. Next up, we have the one and only George Kamel. That I think this interview did over 1 million views pretty quickly because the things that George was talking about, who's also a Ramsey personality, he talked about the key habits of millionaires that lead to financial success. And I love how George breaks these habits down, making them accessible and actionable for everyone. You know, I bring on a lot of billionaires and mega millionaires and people who have had these big exits in their companies to talk about money, but it's also important to have someone like George who's worked in a career for over a decade and found a way to build wealth for himself, doing it in a different approach, but also finding a way to create freedom as well by being debt-free. And so before we dive into this next segment, ask yourself this: how can you cultivate commitment and joy in the small things in your life as you're looking to build wealth as well?
You went from a negative net worth to millionaire status in under a decade. And I'm curious, to start this off, what would be the top 5 habits of millionaires that you've studied and also you've applied in order to get that status?
Ooh, that's a great question. So we did the largest study of millionaires ever done in North America, and I think there's a lot of overlap in the habits that we talk about with the Ramsey baby steps and what we found with millionaires. So it was encouraging because it just gave us some great confidence in the Ramsey plan to go like, this works. Every time you work it, it works, whether you make 40,000 or 400,000. And so one of those habits is living on less than you make. If you can't do that, this is not for you. Like
Right.
if you make 40,000 and you spend 60,000 a year, that's a problem. The other one we found is delayed gratification.
For that first one, why do you think people feel the need to spend more than they actually make?
I think at the root of it, it's discontentment. We're not content with what we have. It's never enough. And thanks to debt, you're able to do that. Like before debt existed, you couldn't spend more than you made. It was physically impossible.
Right.
And all of a sudden with the advent of debt, and I talk about the history of each piece of the puzzle here, like where did credit cards come from? Where did auto loans originate? What about student loans? How did this all happen? And most of it was good intentions that turned into huge profits for companies and corporations going like, we can screw a lot of people over and make a lot of money from interest if we convince them they need that newer car. And look at colleges. What do? They raise prices because you can get as much student loans as you want. Sally Mae is happy to give you the monopoly money, so colleges go, let's double the price. People will pay for it.
Yeah.
And so because of that, people just have been spending more than they made for a long time now and putting it on the tab and going, I'll worry about that later.
Okay. What's the second habit?
The second habit is practicing delayed gratification. That's a discipline that we have lost in an instant gratification culture.
Right.
We have instant access 24/7 all the time in the palm of our hand, 2-hour shipping. And that has caused our brains to just get fried where we're like, I can't wait a week. I can't wait 10 years to build wealth.
I need this now.
I need it now. And we found millionaires are okay with the long term. They're playing the long game. And that's a very different mentality to have.
They don't need it right now. They can say, I'm going to put 10% or 5% or a certain amount of dollar amount every month away automatically, that I don't need to buy something with this. It's going to go to my future self.
Yeah. Or I'm going to pay cash for that car. And that means putting $1,000 away for 24 months to save up for a $24,000 car.
You know what's interesting? When I moved to, my dad always had used cars until he started to make some real money. Then he bought a new car, right? But it wasn't for many, many years. He like had that car until he rode it to the last, I guess, mile. And when I moved to LA, I had $1 million in my account already. By the time I moved to LA, I don't know, 12 years ago, I had built this marketing company up before the podcast. I wasn't like mega millionaire, but I had $1 million in the account of net worth, right? And I came here and everyone had these flashy cars. And I was like, I just don't feel the need to try to live up to some standard in Los Angeles. And I got this car for $4,000 that I drove for the first 5 years that I lived here. And the only reason I got a new car was really for like a tax break and to like, write off on taxes. But this was a 1997 year car.
Wow.
And I drove it around for 5 years happy. It didn't have Bluetooth. It didn't have it had a CD player. And I'm like,
That's all you need.
That's all I needed. And the radio didn't work, but it was like, I don't need some fancy car to feel like
Well, you weren't trying to flex.
I wasn't trying to.
You were focused on what was ahead of you
Yeah.
instead of who the people around you.
Exactly. And it was good enough. It got me around. Eventually I was like, okay, it's time to like upgrade, but not because I felt like I needed to impress, but because I wanted it. And
It
I feel
wasn't
like,
a flex.
Yeah, exactly. But I think
That's the third habit right
Really?
there is we found millionaires, they drive 4-year-old cars on average, and they're all used.
Really?
You would think like millionaires, well, they can afford the new car, like they can do it, but they don't because they understand that cars are a depreciating asset. Every time you get in that car, it's just going down in value.
Yeah.
And when you compound that with a car payment, you're paying interest on something going down in value. It's about the dumbest thing you can do. And I think it's one of the biggest wealth killers today. So that's definitely the third habit.
Okay. What was getting a used car or what would it be?
Driving used cars. And that's part of delayed gratification. It all stems from living on less than you make and delayed gratification.
Okay. And what's the fourth one?
The most interesting one to me was that 97% of millionaires in the study believe they control their financial destiny. That was I was shocked they even put that question in the study, but it was such an empowering one because it's less about money and it's more about belief. Like what the limiting beliefs we have about like, well, I didn't grow up with money. Well, my parents made money mistake. No, you don't understand. I got baggage, man. I made too many mistakes with zeros on the end. And too many people live their life with that Eeyore mentality. But 97% said, I believe I have a sense of control and autonomy and agency over what happens with my money.
This was a question from our YouTube community. We did a poll, and this was the number one thing they wanted me to ask you. What's the one piece of advice you would give someone feeling completely overwhelmed by their financial situation and seeking a way out of that?
I'm going to go with, in the conclusion of my book, I end with a very non-financial answer, and I think it's the right answer for someone like this. And it's there's this gap between cynicism and hope. And I think people have lost hope in America today when it comes to finances. They've resigned themselves to whether I got myself in this mess or it's someone else's fault or whatever's happening to me or the inflation. I believe both are a choice. Like hope is a choice. And for me, it was the hardest choice because I was the guy who was cynical. When I graduated college, I was 23, 40 grand in consumer debt, and I was angry at the world. I was like, I felt lied to because I was like, I followed this path. I got good grades. I got the degree. Where's my wonderful life? Instead, I'm out here trying to get cash back and get enough sky miles to go home for Christmas, wondering how I'm going to achieve my financial goals. And so that to me, I think that's the feeling a lot of people have is this pit of the stomach, lump in the throat, hopelessness, and cynicism becomes the easier choice. It's easier to complain and just go like, someone's got to fix my life.
And blame people, systems or whatever,
So I think it starts with, while yes, we got to get on a budget, we got to make sacrifices, we got to get rid of this debt using the debt snowball, get the emergency fund. Those are the real tactical steps. But I think it starts with an emotional place where we go, all right, we cried it out, and then we wake up and we're like, we got to go to work. And so the question is, the gap between financial stress and financial peace is littered with traps and myths and distractions and noise and whole life insurance bros trying to sell you on some tax-free wealth strategy. And so what you have to do if that's you is go like, I'm cutting out all the noise and inputs. I'm going to follow a proven plan, do one thing at a time with focus intensity and go all in. And if you get out of debt and follow the Ramsey plan and you hate it, you can always go back into debt. The companies will always be ready to hand you more monopoly money to play with. But I've rarely seen that happen. When people get out of debt, the sacrifice they make to get out, 18 to 24 months, that's the average it takes to get out, they never go back. They go, I touched the hot stove, done with that life. I got goals. I'm not trying to pay lenders for the rest of my life. I'm trying to leave a legacy. I want to have generational impact. And so those are the people that inspire me, are the ones that they start there, but it doesn't end there. And unfortunately, too many of us are willing to live in mediocrity for 30 years instead of sacrificing for 3.
Wow.
To have freedom for the next 27.
Yeah.
But it's a very different lifestyle. So that it takes transformation. And you know how difficult that is. You talk about that a lot on this show.
Yeah, delayed gratification is one of those key things. A lot of people are willing to sacrifice 3 years of delayed gratification and not having all the extra things that their friends are doing, or not going out every weekend, or not going on that trip that they wanted to go on, for 3
You're
years.
not getting that house. You're not driving that car.
Yeah, man. But
That's hard.
if you can stay committed for a few years of sacrifice and find joy in the small and then big wins, and find joy in doing things for free or just playing board games with friends, or being creative with your time as opposed to feeling like you always need to spend to enjoy your time, I think you'll live a much better life.
That's the heart of all this. It's discontentment and FOMO, right? It's fear of missing out. What I talk about in the book is JOMO. It's the joy of missing out.
Yeah.
It's the joy of going like, dude, I don't care about all that. I'm running my own race. And the problem with running other people's race is that there is no finish line. Like when you're trying to keep up with someone else, well, they have a whole different life and they have different goals. And so why are you trying to keep up with these people that you don't really care about all that much? And so if you really have strong friends in your corner, they're going to be cheering you on and going like, dude, I totally get it. I'll come over tonight. I'll bring a pizza. We'll hang. We don't have to go out to the bar.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that takes a level of sacrifice, especially when you're young. Because when you're young, it's all about like, these are the best years of my life. I can't skip that vacation. But man, just 2 years out of the next 40, if you can sacrifice, it changes everything.
Yes.
It changes the trajectory of your life. And so that's what I hope people are willing to do at the end of this.
How does someone create that belief that they can have control over their money?
I think it starts with dealing with their past. I mean, our friend Dr. John Deloney has a book called Own Your Past, Change Your Future. And you have to own the shame and the guilt and the baggage and the mistakes and the hurt and the financial trauma, and your parents divorced and it was money stress and money fights and you took on all this debt. And so who are you to ever build wealth and become debt free? You have to grapple with that and go like, that's not who I am. Those are things that happened. And yes, they may have happened to me, but that's not going to control my destiny. And so it starts with that, realizing like, this is my past. That's fine. That's not where I'm headed. And so we always say the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason. So if you can start looking ahead going, regardless and in spite of all of that, I am going to change my family tree. That's what we call it. Build generational wealth. Break the cycles and chains that have come before me. Those people are the ones that inspire me every day when they call the show. And they didn't come from money. They didn't come from trust funds. They came from broken homes and little incomes, and they overcame. Those are the heroes.
Yeah, I think I saw someone earlier this week, a woman come on the show, say she got like $300,000 in debt in like 18 months or something.
Whoa.
On your show.
Yeah.
And maybe it was 300, maybe it was 170,000, I think it was, that she got out of debt in 18 months. And the amount of peace that she had in her facial expression and her body language around being debt free from these, I guess, bad debts, really looked empowering on what she was capable of doing now without that debt weighing her down. And I'm curious, before we get into the next, the fifth habit, how does someone develop that belief that they can pay down their debts if it seems so daunting and so overwhelming?
Realizing that you're not alone, I think, is a really important step. Too many people feel like, well, my situation's different and I'm unique and I'm special and they don't get it. But then I meet people every day and I get in a Financial Peace University class and there's all these other people who made money mistakes. And I go, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only idiot out there. I'm not the only average George out there. That to me is encouraging because it tells me that this path is something that other people have done before me, that will come after me, and that I can do this too. And so I think it's important to get other people around you. And that might mean cutting out some toxic friends who are not trying to be on that journey.
Sure.
Finding people who aren't trying to live on less than they make. That's an important piece. And the other piece is feeling progress. And that's why I think those baby steps are so important. When you start with just, hey, $1,000, can you get $1,000? Most of us would say, yeah, I can sell some stuff. I can get the second job. I can, not eat out this month. Now it's like, all right, let's attack that consumer debt. Debt snowball, smallest to largest. Let's just attack the small debt. Can we just do that? One thing at a time. We're not saving. We're not investing. We're just going to do one thing at a time. And that to me is what builds that hope and builds that progress and momentum and keeps you motivated on the journey. You have to have a little win early on or else you give up.
Yeah, that's good. And what about the fifth habit?
Ooh, the fifth habit is so boring and unsexy that it will upset you, but it is getting on the budget. It's making a plan. And what I found was that budgets are not for broke people. Budgets are not for wealthy people. Budgets are for intentional people. That was a game changer for me because I always thought like we have to be a super nerd and love Excel, Or you have to be like really broke because you think budget, you think this person's real frugal and stingy and cheap and they can't spend anything. You say, I'm on a budget. That means I can't go out with the friends.
Right.
But to me, it's just putting a plan on paper and looking at reality going, my income is $5,000. I need to spend, I'm going to make a plan for every single dollar because otherwise what happens? Dollars float away. You go, where? Oh my gosh, we spent $600 eating out this month and door dashing a burrito. You know, all of that unintentional spending and impulse leads to you not hitting financial goals.
Yeah. So it's conscious spending habits. It's being aware of where you're spending your money. There was a quote in here. Let me see this quote real quick. I saw this based on budgeting.
I had a whole chapter on called Budgeting is Freedom. That's
Yeah.
the first one in the Breaking Free section to help people.
And the quote on that is from John Maxwell. Said a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And I think a lot of people aren't conscious about their spending habits and they're not intentional about where they want their money to go. They buy things based on impulse and based on pleasure and based on desire. And then they realize like, oh, I don't have as much money as I thought I had because they're not intentional about it. How often should we be looking at all of our accounts? Should this be a daily thing? Should it be monthly? Is there too much to look at it where it's an obsession and you're over obsessing versus like a natural flow? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we tell people to make a budget every month. And so actually creating the budget on paper before the next month begins is key. So that will happen one time. And if you've got a spouse, you need to do that together with a quick budget meeting. This is not a 4-hour, Lord of the Rings saga here. This is going, hey, what's going on this month? Hey, we got that birthday party. We got to get that gift for this thing. Remember, we have that vacation coming up. Let's start saving. And so that's all it is. But as far as tracking your transactions, because that's a really important part of the budget, people forget to do. It looks great on paper, and then we just spend the rest of the month and hope. Fingers crossed we have money in the account at the end of the month and don't overdraft. That's most people. But tracking your transactions is a key, and you want to do that once every day or other day. And again, if you do it once or every other day, it's like cleaning your room. You don't ever have to clean your room if you just tidy up real quick. And so with Every Dollar, our budgeting app, this is as easy as just dragging the transaction. Like Amazon, drag it up to shopping. We're done. And so when you do that, you can actually see, do we have any money left for XYZ? Or, hey, we're over budget. We got to figure something out. We got to sacrifice. We got to cut this category here. What most people do is just overspend in 4 different categories. And they go, we're $1,000 over and we put it on the credit card. We'll figure it out next month. And that's why it's important to not only do a budget, but to use your own money. And I have one debit card and I use cash occasionally. That's it.
Wow.
My life is very simple in that way. And I have my Ramsey business debit card as well.
What do you say to people that say, well, I love having a credit card because it allows me to get points for flights or, whatever it might be, for other perks. And if I'm tracking it just like I would a debit card, then I'm missing out on all these other perks.
Well, I found the people who actually could stand to benefit and actually have any meaningful rewards make enough money and spend enough that they don't need the rewards. So it's kind of hilarious at that point to be like, if you make $150,000, the $1,000 in rewards is not changing your life whatsoever. And the mental calories you're spending to play the game and maximize is not worth your time. And so I break down, in chapter 3 on credit cards, I break down 8 different character archetypes that I found with credit cards. And so there was the rewards redeemer. There's the world traveler. The person's like, I got to have my airline miles.
Right.
And I break down, you got to spend $50,000 in order to get your $250 flight. But you don't even know that because what do they give you? Points and miles. What is 100,000 miles? We don't know anymore. The credit card companies want to confuse us. And I found this out from an ex-Capital One employee. She told me verbatim that these credit card companies run 10,000 experiments a year on consumers and A/B test them to go, oh, if we switch it from cash back to points, it triggers something different in their brain. It's like Chuck E. Cheese.
Wow.
You're like, I don't know what 100,000 points is, but it feels like a lot. Let's sign up for the bonus.
That's like 2 candy bars. Yeah.
Exactly. So most people, they're stepping over $1 to hopefully pick up a quarter.
Wow.
And the average credit card interest rate now is 22% APR.
Wow.
But we're doing all this in hopes of getting 2% cash back. You're like, is it worth spending $100 to get $2? What they tell me is, well, I'm not spending any differently than if it was my own money. I'm like, you want to bet? Here's $1,000 cash of your own money. Go hand over $1,000 and see the emotional pain it causes.
Right.
And so adding friction back into our life will actually help us spend less. And that's what happens when you use cash especially, but even a debit card. your brain knows
This is coming right
that's
out of my
Lewis's
account.
money right now. And so in the book, the thesis of that chapter is when it hurts less, it costs more. When we remove the friction, you're going to spend more. And I quote MIT studies using fMRI technology on the brain, and they're seeing when people swipe that credit card, it releases the brakes on spending and hits the accelerator.
Really?
And so it's like both and every study shows you spend more when you swipe that card. And so I try to hit every single objection here because we've heard so much on the Ramsey show. What if I paid the perfect spender is the first one in there? I never pay a dime in interest. What's wrong with using my credit card? You know, all of those excuses.
Pay it off every month, all the different things.
Yeah, but even then, think about it. You could have $0 in the bank at the end of that month. You're not building wealth just because you have a zero credit card balance. I want people to build wealth.
Sure.
Not just play the game perfectly of Capital One.
In these key habits that George talked about, I'd love for you to share your biggest takeaway from the habit that resonated with you the most, or one that you tried that's worked for you. Share that below in the comments. But for me, I really like the idea of delayed gratification. We live in an instant gratification world where it just seems like everyone wants to live up to the richest person on Instagram and look like they live that lifestyle, or they feel like they're not enough if they don't have that. But I really love the idea of feeling and being more with less. Literally this morning, I just got rid of like half my wardrobe, my closet. It's not about having more. It's about having the things that make you feel free, that make you feel light, that make you feel full, and not just constantly filling with more things just to have more things. I'm a big fan of being financially free and creating freedom within yourself first before you have money. You hear from so many different experts that I've had on this show that money won't make you happy by itself. You have to do the work within you and follow the different habits to also make you happy as well. So yes, it will help solve money problems, but it doesn't mean it's going to solve emotional problems that you have with yourself or people in your life. So I love this idea of kind of delayed gratification and just focusing on the journey, focusing on the process, and celebrating those moments as they come, small or big, as you build your wealth and create more money. So very excited about that. Again, leave your big takeaway below on this one. Now, moving into this final clip, this was one of the most popular YouTube videos of the year. It's full of insights and emotion from a very popular person online and in the business world named Patrick Bet-David. And he is a force in the business world, creating incredible content. You probably follow him or watch him, or you've seen his clips online. And in this interview, he gets emotional. I don't think he's ever gotten emotional in another video, in another clip, in another interview. And he talks about how he's done thousands of these interviews and he never gets emotional. But he explains what our thoughts about money should be framed as it's so valuable. He talks about how this should be framed and why that's so valuable. And there's a moment that resonated with me from this interview where Patrick mentions that money wants to be respected, not loved. And when you think about that, ask yourself, am I respecting money or am I loving money? And this is such a powerful mindset to have. And when you think of money, do you fear it? Or are you obsessed with it? Being able to respect money is the key to attracting more abundance, but most of us love it or desire it, or we fear it and we're afraid of it. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it after this. So let's dive in.
What if you had that fire again 5-10 years away where you felt like you were supposed to be doing something else, but you thought, oh, this is going to ruin everything. Literally my business will end, right? Everything I've built will be over if I choose to do what I feel God is telling me to do. After years of resisting and pushing in and deleting and cutting the next thing, whatever that is. How would you feel if you lost it all, but you had the favor of one?
I don't care. I'm good. I don't care. I don't care. Oh man, what a question you're asking me.
If.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
All the money, all the business, all the
Oh, wait, let me tell you, man.
the Yankees, the everything you've
Dude,
dreamed.
When my wife and I, what the hell is this all about? Frickin' A, I do a million and a reason this never happens. No. It's changed my life.
You guys grab a tissue if you got a tissue box out there.
No, man. It's just so annoying. But
It's real, man. I mean, it's not annoying. It's how you feel, and I think it's a beautiful thing for people to know that when you care about so deeply. Yes, you are a killer in business, and yes, you are a media. You know, you're building a media empire, and yes, you're talented. But for people to know how much you care about God and your relationship to God, and how much you love.
You know the gifts he's given me. My wife and I, we have 3 kids at the time, and she comes home and she says she wants a 4th. I said, really? Yeah. Okay. You want a 4th? I thought you said you're done. When she was pregnant with Senna, we're having dinner at Fleming's in Preston Hollow, Highland Park. And we're out on her birthday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. And she says, babe, I want one gift from you. I said, what's that? I don't want you to pressure me to have any more kids. I said, babe, I don't want to talk about it right now. She says, no, we got to talk about it. Says, I just want that gift from you. I don't want any more. This is too much for me.
You said this.
She's saying it to me.
Yeah.
And I said, huh, interesting. So I have a hard time receiving that because we talked about 5 kids before we got married. 101 questions to ask before we get engaged.
So she'd already made an agreement, commitment.
So this is a problem. So watch what happens because you're not in charge. God is in charge. So then we have Senna, first daughter, first kid I ever cried. My 2 boys were born. I was very happy. But Senna, I cried.
Wow.
First time Senna. I helped Senna was freaking life-changing. It was different. So then she tells me this in the house in Plano. She says, I want a 4th. I said, you want a 4th baby? I do. You want a 4th baby? I do. Huh. You sure? Yeah. Positive? Yeah. And she's crying. I mean, dude, you want to go right now? Like, what do you want to do? I want a 4th. I want a 5th. So then she's pregnant. She says, babe, I'm pregnant. No way. Yes. We go to the doctor. Pregnant. Yeah. Awesome. Then we go to kind of see where it's like week 8 or 9, whatever. So I got news for you. What? You're having twins? No. Yeah. I'm laughing so hard. She's crying because we said 5 and we're going to have 5. So ecstatic. We come back, testing every week, all this stuff. And in week 10, we go and the doctor says, we have a problem. One of the kids is what do you call it? Not, could potentially be not fully developed. What's the word for it? Where
deformation.
Yeah, it's not going to be. It's going to be a kid you're going to be having problems with for the rest of your life.
Mm.
And we're like, oh my God, what do you want us to do? And so they come in and they're having a meeting and they're telling you all this stuff. You know, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this. Like, okay, interesting. Then we go home and it still hasn't hit us whether this is going to happen or not. And then we sit down and we start watching videos, raising a child that is, you know,
disabilities or some type of,
and all this stuff, and how it affects kids. And every night for 4 weeks, we're dealing with this. What do we do? What do we not do? Do we go through this? Do we go through that?
And she's like, what, 2-3 months pregnant at this time?
Yeah, she's 2-3 months pregnant, 11, 12 weeks pregnant at this time. And they said, you know, you could have a problem with this and you have to accept you want to do this. And doctors recommending, hey, my recommendation is, you know, if you guys don't risk it, you know, the average person would abort because it's going to affect your family. This is going to affect this. It's going to affect you're 42 years old. You're no longer 35 years old or 32 years old. So then we go in and we finally accept the fact that, you know, it's God's doing. We're good. Let's roll. We go in 2 weeks later. One of them doesn't make it. Now, we don't know which one didn't make it. So they're saying there's most likely the one that didn't make it isn't the healthy one, but you don't know till the baby's born.
Really?
Yeah. So we're like, well, you know, and they're giving these percentages and all this stuff. But we suggest you do this. And we're researching, no, you shouldn't do that because it can hurt the kid that's left. And that kid can get hurt if you go on. try to do this procedure with the needle, that all this stuff they got. I'm like, dude, just show me. Eventually, we're just praying. And Brooklyn is born. Brooklyn Ivy Bit David. Brooklyn is the most animated kid we have in our family. And her twin, the brother, didn't make it. But Brooklyn is the most animated kid in the family. And she changed everything. I can't imagine Lewis living life never meeting Brooklyn.
Wow.
I can't imagine that. Like, to me, when people say, well, we just want to have one, I said, dude, you don't even know you got 2 more you can't wait to meet. Life's going to change you. Go for the 3 and 4. If you're able to do it, if your doctor says you're healthy, go for it. Why am I giving you that story? Because, when we moved to Boca, Florida, the first month I was going through a lot. We're moving people. I'm by myself. Did I make the right decision? Should I have stayed? You're leaving a company you haven't even sold yet, and all you're doing it for is because of this. Did you make the right move? Your wife and kid, they're living in here in this house. You're renting, and your 100 employees at PHP are in Addison, Texas. You're in Boca. So every night, at 11 o'clock, Mario and I would walk. He can tell you stories himself. He'll give you a complete different perspective. And I would listen to Amazing Grace by this lady that sings it. And it's a picture, the thumbnail of the video. And I would listen to Amazing Grace. It's got like 70 million views.
Wow.
And I would just listen to it on repeat.
It's a photo on YouTube.
It's a photo, but it's a song.
It's a song, but it's with a photo,
the thumbnail
yes.
is just a photo, right? And he starts with the sound of rain, and then she sings. It's the best voice for Amazing Grace. There's a lot of great ones. Nothing comes close to this lady here. I'll give you her name afterwards.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I want to give it because if the audience wants to listen to it, I don't want to miss out on this great opportunity. So I listen to this thing every day for 1 hour while walking. And Lewis, I'm in tears. Amazing Grace, it's called Best Version by Far, The Hour I First Believed, is what it says on the cover. It's 5 minutes and 14 seconds. It takes about 45 seconds till she starts singing and the rain sound comes, but worth listening to it. So I'm crying, and I probably talked to God the most during that month. And I said, God, I think I made the right decision, but, I need your help right now. I need you to be here with me. The amount of times this man's done what he's done for me, I owe my entire life to him. Are you kidding me? Like, you can take me today. That's my weak spot. He's done a lot for me. My life's been a great life. Iran was tough, all these other things was different, but life's been a great life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you I'm loving this part of the conversation, by the way, but I feel like people are going to want to learn about money and the mindset of money in a big way, because I feel like you've been pretty fearless in how you've approached money. And I've heard your story, many different times about, the bodybuilding days, being broke and getting on a sales job and all these different things. But what is it you think that blocks people from making money the most? Is it mental? Is it an emotional thing that blocks them? What holds people back from earning more or making more?
Well, I mean, one of them is whatever you hate or you don't respect, you're not going to get. So if you don't respect rich people, you're not going to be rich. If you don't respect people who make a lot of money, you always talk trash about them behind their backs, you're not going to be that person. You're just not. If you admire somebody that's a great executive and an earner and recreating themselves, then guess what? You'll eventually make that money. So, money and success is not attracted to people that talk down to them, just like anything else. They're not attracted to you. They want to be respected. Money wants to be respected. Not loved, but money wants to be respected. It wants you to say, you know what? I respect what we can do with money and how much power you can bring to my family. I respect it. What do I need to do to get more of it? Well, guess what? Right now, your market value is $68,000 per year. You want to improve it? I do. Here's what you got to do. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, great. And the way of making money for the longest time, everybody wants to say entrepreneurship. There's many other ways of making it. That's one way to go. You can be a creator. Mr. Beast has proven the fact that you can be a billionaire by being a YouTuber. The guy's got 300-400 million subscribers. Probably by the time this video comes out, he's at 500 million subscribers. The way he's growing. You can make a lot of money being a YouTuber, talent, creator, behind the scenes, growing a company to the next level, sales, communication, executive, leadership. But no matter what you do, I don't care what you do, whatever business you're in, I'm interested in learning skill sets that are evergreen to 100% of industries.
What are those skill sets?
Let's talk about that. So one is leadership, okay? in every environment, like we had we have a team of 30 people in our production team at the office, right? And it was a lot of chaos 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And I held a meeting. In a meeting I held, I'm watching to see who's showing signs of leadership and what's going to happen. This is an opportunity for them to show who's the leader. And then the person you weren't expecting stood up, and the person you were expecting to lead was kind of like quiet, not saying anything. Well, maybe this guy's not a leader. He's a technical expert, but he's not a leader. This person is not technically as much of an expert as this person, but this guy knows how to bring everybody together and get, all the productions to be done on time, delivered, high quality thumbnails, everything. That guy's a better leader, even though technically he's not as good as this. The market pays for great leaders. So whether I'm an assistant, whether I'm an executive assistant, whether I'm a salesperson, whether I'm a coder, an editor, whether I'm in the military, whether I'm a cop, firefighter, politician, an athlete, it does not matter. Steve Kerr wasn't technically the best player, but he's one of the best coaches in the league today, right? So why is he where he's at? Because of leadership, right? So leadership is what? Getting people to do things they wouldn't do on their own and setting a great example. Great. So that means you have to be able to do what? You have to learn how to build relationships with people to win them over. You have to be able to give tough news, bad news, direct news in a gentle way where it's received. You have to be able to bring people together. You have to be able to challenge people, poke them, challenge them, have the tough conversations with them, manage expectations with them, challenge them to recreate themselves when they hit a plateau. We had a talent dinner this week, 2 nights ago at the house. I brought everybody over and I brought my chiropractor over. Everybody got adjustments at the end till God knows what time. But we're sitting there with the talent dinner and I said, guys, there's one word I want you to be thinking about going into 2024. I want everybody here to keep this one word as their MO, is to recreate yourself going into 2024. And I gave them goals, what I want Valuetainment to happen, what I want Valuetainment Comedy to do, what I want this to do and that to do and this to do, all this other stuff that we got. But what's the most annoying thing about recreating yourself? The most annoying thing about recreating yourself is you have to accept the fact that the current you is not good enough for the next level. Nobody likes that because whenever you get good at the level you're at, you kind of have this warm, fuzzy feeling. You're getting the accolades, you're getting the respect, you're getting the fame. You're like, look at me, I'm so special. But to go to the next level, it's like, oh my God, nobody here cares about my success. I am so small here. But you're not good enough for the next level. Right. So what do I need to do to recreate myself to get to that next level? Do I need to read more? Do I need to study more? Do I need to watch myself more? Do I need to sit down with other people that know me well and ask them to give me, very sincere direction? Do I need to hire somebody to, give me feedback? What do I need to be doing? What
is that for you? What do you need to reinvent next year for yourself?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just hiring tens. What do I need to do to hire tens? I read this book by Steven Schwartzman. I think it's called Whatever It Takes. It's a blue book, billionaire, $20-30 billion guy. This is the Blackstone guy. Phenomenal. They used to be partners with Larry Fink, and they had a falling out, and that's how BlackRock and Blackstone got started. One of them wanted to give equity to all their employees. The other one kind of didn't want to do it. They wanted different structures. Both of them are very successful. But Schwartzman talks about what happened to their company when they started hiring tens. And there's a difference between you think a person is a 10 and then a person is a 10. That person could be an 8.5, but in your world, you've never hired an 8.5.
I feel like a 10.
So to you, that's a 10, but that's an 8.5 in a Blackstone.
Yeah.
That's an 8.5 in maybe, an Apple or something like that. But in your company, they're 10 today. So I know the power of getting people that are smarter and sharper to bring them in here. So right now we're hiring a lot of people. That means we have to pay bigger salaries. That means we have to be creative on our comp. That means we have to have a better offering. We have to bring better brains. And right now, I just see a big opportunity with David Consulting. We have the first 3 phases are squared away. The last 2 phases are going to come here the next 24 to 36 months. Very excited about that. And so to me is we're getting the most random people right now applying at Valuetainment. People that are super qualified, from executives at Disney that are, I won't give the position because then you'll Google who it is and it's that person, executives at Apple who are very happy with what happened, but they want to be part of a company that's going to go from zero to, the next level, and they want to bring that value to it, and they see it, and they kind of like some of the philosophies that we stand for. But now it's about, do we want to spend the money to get these guys? How do we need to create the environment to have the upside for them to come here? Do we have the climate? Our benefits plan right now is solid, very good benefits package that we're offering, 401k health insurance, but everything's about creating the right climate to attract and retain them with us long-term to take the companies to the next level. So that's probably my biggest obsession.
Right climate, meaning the right climate and culture, kind of that type of environment, the whole environment.
Yes, culture, benefits package. One of the reasons why I moved away from Dallas and I went to Fort Lauderdale instead of even going to Tampa, because at first I was looking at Tampa, then I was going to go to Manalapan and Palm Beach, and I was going to go to Miami. And then I said, we're going to make Fort Lauderdale the Burbank of East Coast is what we're going to do.
Wow.
We're going to make Fort Lauderdale the Burbank of East Coast. So
that's cool.
I chose that because it's easy to recruit people to Florida. It's not that easy to recruit creatives to Dallas, but you can recruit creatives to LA. Why are people still in LA? Give me a better weather than a place like this and a climate and water, all this stuff. But Florida, if Texas and California had a baby, it's Florida. Florida gives you the best of both worlds. So that part was intentional to be able to recruit talent to move there.
Again, I'm a big fan of Patrick Bet-David. Let me know your biggest takeaway below in the comments around money, what he talked about. For me, the concept of being a leader in your life and leading your vision. Money wants to be respected, right? And when you are clear on your vision in your life, it doesn't mean you have to have some massive big goals and you have to conquer the world. But if you're just clear, then you are respecting yourself and you're taking the actions towards that vision. When you're unclear and you're a wanderer, money doesn't want to come to a wanderer. It comes and goes pretty quickly. But when you're clear and you have a direction and you're moving towards that direction, you make better decisions with your money. And therefore, you usually are able to attract and create more of it because people can see you as a clear leader in your life. It doesn't mean you have to be a leader of some big company, but a person who leads themselves clearly is a respected individual if they continue to live in accordance to that vision and live up to it. Again, I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway from these different 4 experts on money, on attracting abundance, on the psychology of money, how to make money. And we have all the links to the full episodes below in the description as well. But leave a comment on your biggest takeaway. What spoke to you? What resonated with you the most about money? And what's your biggest challenge with money right now? I'd love to hear your challenges as well. Let me know, again, if there's one person in your life you can think of, a friend, a family member, someone that you're close to who's struggling with money, send them this link to this video or episode and ask them to give you feedback on their biggest takeaway as well. Have a conversation with someone so you can build your money conversations together and start creating and attracting more together. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this format about the psychology of making and manifesting more money and creating abundance in your life. Make sure to subscribe, again, share it with a friend, and I'll see you soon.
In my opinion, there's 3 main skills in business in general. You gotta learn how to sell, you gotta learn how to build, you gotta learn how to lead. So you got to learn how to get people to give you money for stuff. You got to have the stuff to sell them. And then you got to have people that work on your side to help deliver on those other 2. If you can do those 3 things, you're unstoppable. And if you do one of those 3 things,